We know who Kamala Harris's running mate is. We want to know what happens next here as Minnesota's governor is now joining the ticket.
Yeah, David Schultz joins us now, kind of picking your brain. Good morning. I knew you were on standby for this potentially to happen either way. And here we go. Thoughts just right out the gate. What do you think?
Well, he was a finalist, and it's what's interesting about it is really the change. That a month ago it would have been nationally Tim who or Waltz who, but he really moved rapidly in terms of becoming sort of the obviously now we think the nominee to be vice president of the United States. And I think it's because of a couple of things. One is the fact that he has been able to represent for many Democrats many of the values that they want to push through in terms of an agenda. He did this the last couple of years. And two, he's been a very, very articulate and very forceful defender for Harris and Democratic Party values. And so at the end of the day, I think that all came together in terms of making him the nominee.
You know, in this finalist pool here, we had a couple of candidates, governors and a senator from either southern states or mid-south states or battleground states. Obviously, Mark Kelly from a border state in Arizona. And, you know, so a lot of odds makers were saying that might be more appealing to balance out the ticket. What do you think changed it to head towards Minnesota governor?
Well, I think if the reports are correct, Harris has had to juggle a lot of different constituencies within the Democratic Party. Clearly, there's the swing state concern about making sure you hold a swing state. But for a variety of reasons, there were some concerns regarding Shapiro and maybe his stance on Israel. There were concerns about Kelly in terms of maybe his stance on some labor issues. And in many ways, as I tell people, oftentimes the first choice of a vice president is do no harm. And it might simply be also that Waltz got picked because, and I'm not saying anything disparaging about him, he was the person where there was the least number of let us say, questions or opposition to him. But conversely, he also had strong support among labor, among people who were pro-choice, among people who support limits on guns. And so in many ways, he fit all the boxes, and the Harris campaign decided to go with somebody who fit the needs of various constituencies, hoping that that's a stronger draw than going with the conventional strategy of picking somebody from a swing state.
So let's talk about, you mentioned some of the pluses, if you will, in his column. Unions seem to back him, different things that he's done here in Minnesota. Let's talk about some of the negatives that might hurt this campaign or that the GOP will use to his, you know, once this is now the ticket.
Well, I think there's two things. First is going to be the fact that you're going to see the Republicans bring out videos of the riots that occurred after George Floyd's murder and really sort of, you know, hammer, you know, Governor Waltz on his handling of that issue. I think the second thing is I think is a big issue is the fact that while Waltz might be viewed as somewhat of a moderate in this state, in the critical 6 swing states, he's going to be viewed as very, very liberal. And those 6 swing states are swing states because they're to the right or more conservative than let's say the average Democrat running for president, and to the right compared to where Donald Trump is. And so if he's perceived as being too liberal, given the agenda that he moved in the last couple of years, that I think becomes a problem. So Harris, I think, has decided to run a real liberal ticket, a real liberal agenda, with the hope that she can energize the big base of the Democratic Party, as opposed to saying we're going to run and try to adopt or appease to some more centrists.
What does this mean for Minnesota itself? I mean, we're not exactly a swing state, but we've been kind of edging towards that in, you know, very purple state. First of all, what do you think that does for Minnesota in the election this fall? I mean, you can kind of guess where that might go, and also what it might mean for the campaign season. Does that mean somehow Minnesota gets more visits from the tickets on both sides here?
Well, when it was Biden versus Trump, polls were indicating the state was somewhat tight at that point. But if the most recent polls are correct, the state has moved to where Harris has about a 10-point lead over Trump. It was clearly moving away from being a swing state. Here, if you think of Waltz being popular in the state and the bump that he potentially might have in Minnesota, it's probably moving away from being an official swing state, but nonetheless, we're going to still get a lot of campaigning here. And the reason why is that we're right next to a critical swing state, Wisconsin. Fox 9 and the major media markets for the Twin Cities also carry over into Wisconsin. So campaigning here for Trump also gets you coverage over into Wisconsin. So I think we're going to still see visits to this state. I think that Trump campaign, at least initially, might want to still force Democrats to defend the state. But as it gets further and further into the campaign season, if it really looks like this state is pretty solidly going to stay in the Democratic camp, Trump campaign may make perfunctory, may make some trips here, again, so it gets covered in western Wisconsin. But if resources are short, you go to the states that are really important, and it would be likely what? The Michigans, Pennsylvanias, Wisconsins.
Well, you mentioned Wisconsin. We knew that Harris's campaign and her soon-to-be determined VP candidate, now we know Walz, were going to be in Wisconsin tomorrow. We know that Vance is going to be in Wisconsin. Eau Claire, you mentioned Wisconsin playing a role here. Interesting to note, too, that it looks like the Trump campaign, at least for Vance's schedule, is kind of following this track of these different swing states. What do you make of that, of essentially, you know, Harris has a campaign stop in Eau Claire, Vance will have a stop in Eau Claire. Is that smart? What do you think about that?
Well, sort of two things. First, again, both campaigns know it's going to come down to about 6 states, 5 or 6 states. I keep telling people, based upon my analysis as a political scientist, this election is down to what 150,000 to 200,000 voters will do in those 6 states. And so not a surprise, Vance or the Trump campaign is in the same places where Harris is going at this point. But it's a smart strategy what Vance is trying to do, because if Harris is getting, and Harris and Walz are getting media attention in Wisconsin and so forth, the best way of counteracting that attention is to also make an appearance so that they don't get the sole coverage, you know, on the 5 o'clock news. So I expect we're going to see this, you know, for the next several months, basically about a half a dozen states, maybe a couple more, maybe Minnesota, maybe North Carolina gets thrown into it, maybe Virginia. But the candidates are all going to be in the same small cluster of states, basically talking to a very small number of voters to try to motivate them for the election. And that's really the reality of American politics at the presidential level. It's the swing states, it's the swing voters within those swing states. It's a few isolated counties within those states that are really driving the election.
Okay, thank you, David Schultz, providing some insight here. Presumably now we'll see a debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz here at some point, and it'd be interesting to see how those two match up in that meetup. But we'll be talking a lot more with you
Sure.
over the coming months. Thank you, David.
And thank you for getting
My
on
pleasure.
so quickly on a developing situation this morning. We appreciate it.